Good afternoon. Welcome to American Exceptionalism with Susan Swift and myself, Kevin Fobbs. Today, we are going to tackle, will state heartbeat bills shield unborn babies from abortion? And we're going to focus our attention on the state of Georgia, which has determined to make the Living Infants Fairness and Equality, or the LIFE bill, that's House Bill 481, the gold standard for protecting the life of unborn babies from the very first heartbeat, as the new battleground where the lives of millions of unborn babies of abortion actually have been spilled. And we're going to talk about why it's so important to prevent this bill from actually being aborted, so to speak, because that's what the Democrats are trying to do.
Democrats are trying to abort the abortion laws, absolutely.
Yeah. And they're doing it all over the nation, and Georgia actually is one of those many bills that have been cropping up. We're going to talk a little bit about that later, but what's important about this too is that it passed the Senate without debate, and it goes to the governor's office, and so he's going to be dealing with that bill, and we're going to see what happens after that, which we can predict, and we'll talk about that too. But actually this year alone, Maryland, Mississippi, Kentucky, Texas, Florida, Minnesota, Missouri, Ohio, South Carolina, and West Virginia have introduced heartbeat bills, just like the state of Georgia. And so we're going to talk about that, the U.S. Constitution, and will it really protect the unborn with this new heartbeat bill, or bills that are cropping up and coming up here in America, Susan. So we're going to talk about that, and also what the purpose, we believe the purpose is for states passing those kinds of bills.
The interesting thing to me is that, you know, what we're seeing overall, first of all, let's talk about what the heartbeat bill is, okay? Because that's the important thing for people to know. The Georgia bill is doing. It's called Living Infants Fairness and Equality, or LIFE, L-I-F-E, Living Infants Fairness and Equality, LIFE bill, HB 481. What they are attempting to do is define personhood from the minute your heart starts beating. So they're trying to fix an objective medical standard when the heart beats. Okay, that's something that can't be denied, that can't be interpreted away. Just like currently with Roe versus Wade, they can say viability. That's their medical standard that allows abortion up to the point of viability, which is approximately 23, 24 weeks. So what this state bill, state of Georgia, is doing is moving the marker way back down to the heartbeat of the baby. Now, a baby's heartbeat begins between the 3rd and 4th week of gestation, meaning about 3 or 4 weeks after fertilizations happen. So in the first month, literally, the baby has a heartbeat. We're not that the 24-week mark. That's past. That's already halfway there, because 20 weeks is you're halfway to 40 weeks. That's the midway point. That this would, and that's why there's all these states who are jumping on to pointing to the heartbeat, because that is an objective medical, it's a measurable thing. We don't know exactly, between one woman and another, what date the implantation would take. We don't know. Right. And that it would be a spiritual question. When does the soul, enliven the body? That would be called quickening. We don't know when that is. So we're all now looking for a new standard, medical standard that can be measured. And we've hit on heartbeat, which happens much earlier than viability, the sliding scale of Roe versus Wade. The interesting thing here, though, that I see overall is that the battle is no longer at the federal. We're not fighting the battle at the Supreme Court anymore. Exactly. We all know what's happening. We all know that Trump has placed 2 conservatives, but we've now got 5 to 4. We've got a majority of conservatives on the court, and enough people believe that Roe versus Wade will be overturned because of medical advancements like this, because of viability. It is a sliding scale, and because we have now conservatives on the court. So the battle's no longer at the Supreme Court. The battle is now at the states, and the states are passing these laws, Georgia's one of them, to put a law in place so that it's like a placeholder, so that the minute Roe versus Wade falls, the state law, because federal law only overwhelms state law in certain certain circumstances, and that's when, like with abortion, the Supreme Court has said, all right, this is something that is so pressing, is so compelling because of equal rights. We're going to extend it over all of the states. Well, the states are now realizing that Roe versus Wade is going to fall. They're betting on that, and they're putting their own legislation in place to protect babies from almost the moment of conception. We're talking at least heartbeat bill now. So you cannot, what's going to effectively, depending on which state you're in, you won't be able to get an abortion past about 2 or 3 weeks. And that, of course, threatens Planned Parenthood and the manufacturers of the abortifacient pill, the RU486. That's big money. This is a ton of money that we're talking about.
We're talking about billions
yes,
of dollars.
Billions and billions. And it's pharmaceuticals. And people love to trash the pharmaceuticals. I don't like to do it because pharmaceuticals make the miracle medicines and drugs that keep people alive. I mean, we have the best pharmaceutical industry in the world. We've saved millions and millions of lives, but there is a sliver of pharmaceuticals that are just designed, they're death pills. That's what a birth control pill is, and that's what an abortifacient is. Look, it's like these women out here in California, they're all organic. We have to have organic chicken, and we have to have organic, no GMO food because it's not pure, all of that, right?
Right.
And yet these same women who are so obsessed about organic chicken and GMO, and we have to have free range chicken because God forbid that chickens are in cages while they eat. Okay. No, but that we have to have, but yet they will take a pill every morning, a pill that renders them sterile, that lingers in their system and actually raises the likelihood, the risk of abortion for up to 7 years after taking the birth control pill. They'll do that without even thinking. And the disconnect is crazy. What man in his right mind? Well, and they've got that pill. They're developing that pill too for men. Here, why don't you just take a pill and your guys won't swim straight. They'll swim in circles. You'll be sterile. And they're selling like that's a good thing. I mean, it's the craziness of it. But now we're going to have, that's going to be threatened by this very legislation, by a heartbeat bill, because these abortifacient, the RU486 and the birth control pill, arguably, you can make an argument that it prevents implantation as well. It threatens it promotes the uterus to expel its contents just naturally because you're taking a birth control pill. So you're talking about billions and billions of dollars in the pharmaceutical industry, and you're also threatening potentially women's ability, like Sandra Fluck, she demands that welfare and we pay for birth control pills.
Yeah, now listen to this, Susan. Think about that. Think about the one thing that, remember in the Obamacare bill, that Justice Roberts in the Supreme Court said that this was a tax bill. Now, this particular bill would also allow parents to claim a unborn baby once a heartbeat is detected, and on their taxes as dependents, and count this baby towards the state's population in the census. It would
be a dependent. I would definitely say it would be a dependent at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that Roberts, I'm going to call him Chief Justice Roberts. I'm going to call him Chief Justice Flipper Roberts, because he's trying to become the new Kennedy on the court. The one who listens to both sides and is very, very reasonable. He's the one that said that Obamacare was a tax, which it clearly is not. Obamacare forces you to buy insurance. And so we've had to do this workaround, which McCain under, former Senator, the late Senator McCain, scuttled, which was we need to repeal it altogether. Couldn't do that. So we've repealed the mandate to buy it, but we're literally having to abort Obamacare a piece at a time. Just like abortionists tear up babies in the womb, we're having to grab hold of the leg or grab hold of the arm. This is what these sick people do. We're having to do that to the Obamacare bill because we've got Chief Justice Flipper Roberts who said, well, it's a tax. I think it's a tax. I think that it's a tax. I mean, this is the craziness that we're having to deal with. And so I like that we're having now state legislators stepping up to the plate and saying, fine, as soon as Roe versus Wade is gone, and it will be gone. That's the good news we need to take away from this. It's
Yeah.
not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's
Yeah,
just when.
exactly. And that's, when we think about this again, that's why, as you said earlier, Susan, that these states, both on both sides, the pro-life and pro-abortion sides in those state legislatures are crafting bills or positions because they know that Roe v. Wade will be falling within the next several years.
Yes,
Sooner than later.
all we need is, I mean, it could be in this, I guess the term they're starting to release their decisions that began back in October. So we're talking about this summer in October. I mean, we're coming up on the next term for the new Supreme Court. Those cases are already in the pipeline, and all we need is one case to get there that the justices can rule on. I don't know which case that's going to be yet, but that's all we're talking about. And Roe versus Wade will fall. It might even fall within the current presidential span. We've got 2 more years on Trump. It might just fall. And that would be a huge political issue for Trump to be able to say, well, you know, my justices took down Roe versus Wade. That would be huge.
Oh, huge.
Oh, huge, with a Y, with a big Y. But, yeah, that'd be wonderful. Uh-oh.
Well,
It's a dog. Hey, God. Oh, my goodness.
you know, one of the things that was also mentioned, the biggest threat to, one of the biggest threats to abortion rights are as we just mentioned earlier, the incremental changes that have been made since the Casey decision in 1992. And in that decision, the Supreme Court didn't overturn Roe, but actually talked about cases that could do it in time. And I think that's really where the pro-life advocates have been very, very smart about this, in that they have they picked a long game since 1992 and actually focused on what you could do very slowly. And we have states like Texas and even in Ohio where they began to look at various aspects of Roe as opposed to trying to hit that unbelievably very harsh decision head on. And we've seen the success, and now there's still over 30 states that have been making some type of progress in terms of pro-life in those states. And of course, we talked earlier about the states that are right now considering or have passed, will be passing soon, heartbeat bills.
And I think we're going to summarize that very shortly, coming up soon. The interesting thing that right now, as you've mentioned, the pro-life advocates have come at it from a new way and have started chipping away at it, while the abortion industry has really relied upon precedent as their weapon. And,
right.
And we've got this is Bridget Amiri. She's the deputy director of the ACLU's Reproductive Freedom Project. Did you know that the ACLU has got a whole wing there? They probably have several lawyers who are that's all they do all day is ponder reproductive freedom projects. And everybody knows what, well, you should if you don't by now. Reproductive freedom is a euphemism for abortion. It doesn't mean that women are somehow enslaved by reproduction. There's no lack of freedom. This is all, reproductive freedom is a way of saying I have the right to kill a baby in my womb.
Right.
That's all that means. Anyway, Bridget Amiri, who's the deputy director of this wing of the ACLU's, abortion factory, she stated, and this is a quote, "We think this is a very straightforward legal issue. States can't ban abortion. It has been well settled over 40 years ago in Roe versus Wade." Okay? So they're just standing on precedent. That's all they've got.
Yeah.
That's all they've got is Roe versus Wade. And as you well know, Plessy versus Ferguson, that was the decision that said, well, separate but equal. That was settled law too until Brown versus Board of Education came along in 1954. So, precedent is only so good as the court hasn't changed and we don't have a new vision for what a person is. I mean, up until 1954, we're talking separate but equal, 3/5 of a person. It was racism that was allowed by the Supreme Court. And yet that has fallen. That precedent, thankfully, has fallen. This precedent of Roe versus Wade that basically it's a science. It's a denial of science.
But what's important too, Susan, in terms of the Plessy versus Ferguson, and what happened after that is that piece by piece, the decision by the Supreme Court in 1893 into the Plessy versus Ferguson was eroded, just as we're seeing with these cases and with these states that are passing these laws, even constitutional amendments in some of these states. So we're seeing that erosion, and finally, it's just overwhelmingly obvious that the separate but equal was not just illegal, it was unconstitutional. And I know that we're going to be seeing that same thing in terms of the final decision that the technology. We have the moral ground. And even in the decision in 1973, they talked about the technology, but they still set it at 28 weeks. And now we're down to 20. And the reality is that as we keep showing the humanity that we know is obvious in terms of conception and being a human being, we will see this happen. And that's what I find interesting. And, again, we're going to talk in another show at kind of summarizing what we are seeing across the country. But I just want to say something very quickly, that looking at what the legal attacks have been and helping us as Americans who are pro-life, and especially those who are somewhere in the middle that don't really have a decision, that you will probably remember now noticing that there were fetal pain laws that have actually been passed too, so that you can see that and understand that the baby in the womb feels pain. It seems obvious.
Yeah,
I know.
It's undeniable. We've had.
Yeah.
I mean, former abortion doctors have testified, and they've changed their mind. I mean, and it's clear that they'll recoil. You can see them filming. They'll start to try to move away from the forceps or whatever. And we also know from survivors of abortion, and these are just horrific. These are saline abortions where the saline burns the baby alive in the womb, and yet sometimes these children survive, and they've testified in front of Congress, and they're standing there. They bear the scars, so obviously they feel pain. You can't the nerves, everything's already in place. It's not like the nervous system doesn't engage until after you take a breath. Babies can feel pain before they take a breath, and it's patently obvious. I just like that. Look, abortionists and the pro-aborts, they're knuckle-dragging science deniers. They're Neanderthals. They don't believe in science. They focus on the right of the woman. It's a top-down, dictatorial, tyrannical view that only the woman matters. The husband doesn't matter. We know that, right? We were discussing that show earlier, that men have no rights to protect their baby or even nothing. And now the baby doesn't matter. The husband doesn't matter. The woman is all the be all. She is like a tyrant. She can decide life and death. And they completely ignore the science behind conception, the science behind the development of a fetus. When they have they got me said it's not a fetus. You know what? That's what they do. They like to adopt scientific sounding words. It's a fetus. It's a zygote. It's a ball of cells. They use scientific terms only when it can dehumanize or when they can spin it in their way. They don't, and then they resent it when I say, well, I think it's a baby. Well, it's a fetus. So they use science as a shield. And they ignore the rest of the science, which is, well, wait a minute, this has unique DNA, it's got fingerprints, it's got eyelids, it can feel pain, it practices swelling, it's got a heartbeat, all of things, it can hear sound. Look, there's billions of products, sold on Amazon for fetal monitoring, and where mommy can put the sound on her belly and can sing to the baby and things like that. This is all known. But yet they ignore that. They deny all of that. They are truly science deniers, except for in the fact, but I'm going to use a zygote fetus. We've even got an article on this. There's an article. This is from the patch.com. And the title itself it spins it. Why unconstitutional fetal heartbeat bills beat on. Why is it unconstitutional? The title itself, it already shows their bias.
Their bias, exactly.
Website. What the subtitle is that lawmakers in nearly a dozen states want to be the ones to pass law that would overturn Roe versus Wade. They are already in their title belying their bias that a fetal heartbeat is unconstitutional. They don't want to call it a baby heartbeat. They want to call it a fetal heartbeat. It's all this, it's spin to dehumanize the most vulnerable among us, to dehumanize babies. That's the name of their game, because all they've got, again, is precedent. That's all they're standing on, is precedent.
Now, here's something too, Susan. Recently, a federal judge in Kentucky temporarily banned the Kentucky law that prohibits abortion after a fetal heartbeat is detected. Now, what's interesting about that is that, and he's not, this particular federal judge is not alone. Others have done that as well. But this particular
Judge David J. Hale of the Western District of Kentucky. For all of you guys out there in Kentucky,
yeah.
go visit him and ask him.
Exactly.
Judge Hale.
Right. He said that there is a possible distinction of when a mother becomes aware she is pregnant, and that might be a line in the sand. So what he's actually, I think, and this is just my take on it, by saying that is it possible that you can, if this woman is aware that she's pregnant, that becomes a line in the sand, meaning that this law.
So what you're suggesting is maybe we're advancing it even farther. Closer, right. I should say, even closer to conception. So because there's conception, and then there's about between 22 and 28 days until a heartbeat can be detected. But in between that, those 22, 20, let's say 25 days for sake of argument right now. So between 0 and 25 days, somewhere in there, before then, a woman may know that she is pregnant. And so he may be, what you're thinking is that perhaps Judge Hale is moving the line even closer to that, to say, look, we don't have to wait for a heartbeat. If the woman knows she's pregnant, maybe that's the line in the sand, because once you know you're pregnant, that's another person that's
right.
And at that point, if that would be a knowledge test, if the woman knows, then she can't harm this other person. That
right.
It gets to be equivalent to assault. That would be very interesting.
Because that's how I read it, and that's how I saw it, is that by saying this, by making that statement, it to me, it was like a trigger. The trigger of when
knowledge is a trigger.
Yeah, knowledge is a trigger.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. Of course, ACLU would just get, the 16-year-old, the 18-year-old to come in and say, I didn't know I was pregnant, right? Because then if knowledge is the only test, that's subjective. That you can be ignorant. You can feign ignorance even. Right. That's why a heartbeat bill, if something, it's detectable. And guess what? Whenever that heartbeat starts, maybe there are other, look, there might be, I am not a doctor, but I'll bet you that there are other indicia that are measurable even before 25 days or 20 days in. You can move it back to implantation, right? I mean, there's got to be a point at which maybe even, but you know what? I'm glad that we're at that point. We're right. Under 30 days. We're in. If we can push the standard that was set by Roe versus Wade, viability. If we can erode viability all the way back to heartbeat, which is what we're talking about. These are
right.
This is what you're saying, the erosion. It's like waves on the sand of the beach, or it's like D-Day and Normandy. It's waves and waves and waves of legal assaults on Roe versus Wade. If we can move it back to day 30, day 25, and say, okay, heartbeat, that will rule out, that will save, this way, that'll save many, many lives.
Yeah, because you think about
it, thousands of babies will be saved.
The Supreme Court in 93 or 1973 had 28 weeks. Now we're down to 20 weeks. And right. with the heartbeat, or with the heartbeat bill, it moves it down to perhaps anywhere from, let's say 25 days. And then right. with conception. So again, as you said, we're seeing this erosion And actually, and I call it the life zone. We're going into into the life zone.
We're expanding the life zone.
Exactly.
Expanding the life zone, exactly. And it, you know what? It's sad that we shouldn't even have to, because before the 60s, before there was the pill and stuff, people, look, babies are a blessing. Babies are a gift from God. They're life. They're renewal. That's how the universe renews itself. That is the it's the eternal hope and chance of the next generation. Just when you ever get very cynical about, oh, our government is a mess and we've got the swamp, well, that's why we should lay hope in millennials and in Gen Z and the generations after that, because they are waves of hope. They're waves and waves and waves of hope, of evolution, of life coming, renewing itself, making the world a better place, and standing on the shoulders of those who've gone before. That's how anything has ever gotten accomplished. That's how electricity has been now created, so that we've got things like cell phones and everything. I mean, it's just, without that, the ever renewing generation after generation of life, we'd still all be living in caves. You know, I mean, but yet we've got political factions who want to kill the next generation. They're literally killing hope. They want to, if they are successful, that the entire crazy notion that the world cannot sustain life, that somehow we're all going to starve and die, and climate change, and oh my gosh, we've only got 12 years to live, according to Ocasio-Cortez. I mean,
or Beto. Beto just said it too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that guy. I mean, he's a dirt eater, okay? Beto O'Rourke, dirt eater, all right? And he was like, did you read about this guy? He would like spring up on his wife, and he would have like psycho shower things. He'd like scare his wife, I guess, with, repeating it with psycho showers. And then he one time pulled some particularly green baby poop out of his kid's diaper and put it on a plate and plated it for his wife and said, hey, it's avocado. I mean, what kind of you gotta be kidding me. This is, I'm calling him Bizarro Beto. I mean, can we just, y'all, let's just call him Robert.
Think about this. This guy, you said, Susan, this guy, when he lost the election to Senator Cruz, he ate dirt. Yeah.
He went out and ate dirt, but it's some sort of cosmic like cleansing thing. I'll tell you, that's a high colonic. I'll tell you that right there. Oh my gosh, what a whack job! I mean, what a bloody whack job this guy is. I mean, I can't. And then he put both feet in his mouth when he said, "Well, yes, I sometimes help my wife, raise the kids," or kind of like putting her down. Like, it's just, this guy has got. I mean, there's no gravitas there. There's not even common sense there. The guy's a whack job. He also wrote this whole. It's been revealed that he did this writing fantasy, kind of like it reminds me of something like out of the author of Pet Sematary. He composed this, article about how he had this fantasy of, I was driving my car and I saw these children in the crosswalk, and I decided to rev my engine and I hit them until I heard them cry. I mean, he wrote this stuff. Yeah, no, I'm not making it up.
You can't make this stuff up. I mean, he's a whack job. Right. He's
a whack job. He's a total. Anyway, I'm a little bit off topic, but in any event, I mean, this is the Democrat Party. This is who he raised, what, $6 million?
$6 million, right.
$6 million. And these are the same people who say that, well, a heartbeat doesn't mean that that it's a baby, it's really a fetus. They're disconnected from reality. They're just connected.
And so we're going to talk about that in an upcoming show. And I think to close this out, and it's important that we, again, focus on the fetal heartbeat, because that really is at the heart of this, I think, debate.
So to speak.
Yeah. And and
not to make fun, but it is. It's the heart. It's the heart of life.
Yes,
the heartbeat
exactly.
bill is the heart of the pro-life movement. It is.
Right. And so, keep that in mind, that what we're really fighting for, and what you're fighting for too, is to save the future. It's to make certain that those millions of unborn babies actually have an opportunity. And with states, again, like Georgia and Kentucky, Ohio, and many other states that are entertaining this, you have to join in. and learn more about what it means for your child's future, unborn child's future, and what it means for this nation as well. So we're going to keep focusing on this and hammering away at this, because this is crucial. This is crucial in terms of the 2020 election. That's right around the corner. The president has already had 2 successful nominees that are now sitting on the Supreme Court, with Justice Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, but we need more.
We need 2 more.
We need at least.
Breyer, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think they need to retire.
Well, you know what? We know that Breyer, she just, I'm sorry, that Ginsburg, she just had a birthday, so she's now 86.
86 and still going strong, but I think she needs to enjoy some retirement and enjoy her years
some me time. She needs some
me time. Yes, some me time. I'm hoping that Trump will get 2 more.
Yeah,
that would be nice. That'd be 4 appointments in his first term. Would that be just wonderful? This is why elections matter. This is why. Yeah. If you don't do anything else, you must vote for the most conservative presidential candidate who can win, because he's the guy who's appointing these judges. Like, Judge Hale. He's in the Western District of Kentucky. I believe he's a federal judge, not a state judge.
He's a federal judge.
So that means he was appointed by a president. We don't know which one yet, but that's how that happens. If you want conservatives, or if you want judges who are strict constructionists and actually look at the law and say, well, is this constitutional? By comparing it to the Constitution, the best way to do that is to vote for a president who tends toward conservative principles, because he will more than likely pick those types of judges. That's why the left is going insane and trying to make sure that Trump doesn't have a second term, and is actually they still won't give it up. They're still trying to have him impeached somehow, because he is doing a heck of a good job of populating the bench with conservative judges.
But you know what, Susan? Here's the thing. I think actually they may have given up on impeachment. I'll tell you why. Because now they're going after packing the court. And
yes, they want to do that, and as soon as they've got to win first. And
you got to win first.
They win, then they're talking about this is just like they dusted off the New Deal. Now it's Green New Deal. So they're dusting off Roosevelt's attempt to pack the court. That was way back when, and that's all they got. They just have to like they're relying on precedent with Roe versus Wade. That's all they got. They're basically dusting off Plessy versus Ferguson, the notion of precedent to support Roe versus Wade. They're now reaching back into Roosevelt's time and World War II era type stuff and saying, well, New Deal, and well, let's pack the court. Didn't work then, not going to work now, and that's why we have to stay vigilant and keep watching these sneaky Democrats who they don't have a new thought in their head. They're just tyrants. That's all they are.
And I'm with you, Susan. So again, thank you for joining us on American Exceptionalism. This has been a wonderful topic. We're going to keep focusing on this topic, expanding the topic, getting your input as well, because we have to fight. There is no other option but to fight on behalf of those who cannot protect themselves, those who are unborn. And I have to tell you, that's a very noble fight. It's a very, I think, important fight, essential fight for the freedom that they deserve, the freedom to be born.
It is the American fight, because
Absolutely.
America is founded on individual liberties, and that is the American fight.
Exactly.
That's why we're here, to fight for the individual.
So we invite you to join in with us each and every time that we focus on this, because it's important. It's important for you as well. Thank you. God bless you. God bless America.
God bless America.
Bye.